So, with last week's video, I raised the question of who Sonic's Reverse Flash could be. And instead of going the easy route of Eggman or Shadow, I ended up choosing Mephiles from Sonic 06. And I thought that was a pretty good pick, especially since it's probably a character people don't think about all that often. However, I unfortunately don't know everything about the Sonicverse, and, well, it seems a few of you guys had a few other ideas of who a better Reverse Flash type character would be, namely Metal Sonic and Scourge the Hedgehog. So I figured, why not pit my pick against yours and see who really deserves the title of Sonic's Reverse Flash? I mean, seems pretty self-explanatory, right? So then let's get into it. Alright, so how this is gonna work is there's gonna be 9 rounds. Each round will be for a different subject that pertains to the Reverse Flash in some way. And I'll take each Sonic character, comparing them to see who is the most applicable to that trait. And the one most applicable will get 3 points, the one second most applicable will get 2 points, and the one who basically doesn't have that trait at all, or just very little of it, will get 1 point. This will go on until all the rounds are over. And at the end of the last round, I'll tally up all the points, and whoever has the most points will truly be the best example of Reverse Flash within the Sonicverse. Everyone get it? Okay, hopefully you said yes, because I'm gonna jump right in with the first round of character design. If we look at Flash and Reverse Flash, they are both the same species, human. They're also both men, both around the same height, and they both have very similar suit designs. The main differences being suit color, eye color, and the flipped orientation of the lightning bolt symbol. So how's this going to translate to the Sonic characters? Well, they need to be a different color from Sonic, have different colored eyes, and they also need to be the same species and both be guys. Now, instantly, Metal Sonic falls behind the most in this category, because while he is in a way an opposite of Sonic by being a robot, well, he's a robot, not a living thing in the same sense as Sonic. He also has nearly Sonic's exact same coloring, of mostly blue with the red type shoes. Now, ironically, he is the only one of these 3 to have glowing red eyes, but in comparison to everything else, it's not enough to put him above the other 2 characters. And in this case, I'd say that the first place winner is Scourge, because as I said in my last video, Mephiles has more of Zoom's aesthetic, dark and creepy. Meanwhile, Scourge does look opposite of Sonic, with the color green instead of blue, and blue eyes instead of Sonic's green eyes, as well as the leather jacket and scars across his chest, all make him look opposite, but not nightmarish. Also, he pretty much is the same species-wise. He's not, technically, because he's from a different planet in a different universe, but design-wise, he looks the most identical to Sonic, while also being his opposite. Since, that was his initial purpose in the comics, it seems. So, Scourge comes out on top with 3 points, Mephiles with 2 points, and Metal Sonic with 1 point. Moving on now, we have round 2. So, let's talk about origin. And I'm not talking about origin stories, just the origin of where these characters come from. Reverse Flash comes from the future. And even more than that, he's always bouncing around, popping up at different points in the timeline to cause Barry problems. To my knowledge, Scourge doesn't ever do this. He seems like a pretty fast character, and I know there are theories about him time traveling, but at the very least, he isn't from the future or the past. He's just from an alternate universe from a planet called Anti-Mobius. On the other hand, Metal Sonic has in fact time traveled, thanks to his debut game Sonic CD. So a little bit more like the Reverse Flash. However, if research served me right, Metal Sonic was made in the present by Eggman. So even though he time travels, that wasn't really part of his origin, it was just part of one of his missions. Additionally, Metal Sonic isn't always traveling through time. To my knowledge, it happened just in Sonic CD. So while it's still kind of cool, it's not enough to have him score the top spot in this round. So who does that leave? Mephiles. Now, he might not just be some being from the future to come back and cause chaos, but he did escape from a time paradox, and he basically messes with time the entirety of his game. In fact, time travel is his whole thing. From the moment he splits off from Iblis, Mephiles is all about altering timelines, controlling future outcomes, and existing across all of time, after he fuses with Iblis again to become Solaris. And unlike Metal Sonic, who seems to have abandoned this concept as of more recent material, the one other time we see Mephiles in Shadow Generations, Mephiles still has roughly the same goal of him wanting his timeline to exist. Not an exact match to Reverse Flash, but closest enough in my eyes. So in this category, Mephiles scores 3 points, Metal Sonic gets 2 for being at least involved with time travel, and Scourge gets 1 point for sticking to universe travel. Moving on to round 3 is the motivation behind their destruction. For Reverse Flash, he simply has an all-consuming hatred for Barry Allen. More specifically, it was an idolization turned to hatred. However, none of our Sonic villains here have ever idolized Sonic, so unfortunately that part doesn't really carry over. But the pure hatred part does, especially with Metal Sonic. Even though he was created by Dr. Eggman to mostly just be the next tool for him to ruin the Hedgehog, Metal Sonic often goes off on his own to try and destroy Sonic, all because he wants to be better than Sonic. Scourge has some similar traits. He for sure despises Sonic, and what Scourge sees as a privileged life compared to himself. However, I've never gotten the vibe that Scourge wants to be better than Sonic. More so, I think Scourge wants to bring Sonic down to his level and make him evil like himself, which then leaves Mephiles as the bottom choice. And this is simply because Mephiles doesn't have any specific hatred towards Sonic. Sonic is just a means to an end in his plan of world domination and existing across all of time. He needed to make Elise cry to release Iblis. Elise loves Sonic, therefore he kills Sonic. If Elise was in love with any other character, he would have gone after them instead. Mephiles is truly a case of, it's not personal, just business, to the most insane degree. Therefore, 3 points to Metal Sonic, 2 points to Scourge, and 1 point to Mephiles. Now for round 4, we've got methods. What does Reverse Flash do to make Barry Allen's life a living nightmare? He plays the long game. He goes undercover. He manipulates people. He lies, gaslights, and stabs you in the back with a smile on his face. He's not just running around punching things, he's pulling strings. Mephiles excels here, as I said in my last video. In Sonic 06, he manipulates Silver, tricks Shadow by using his grief of Maria, and once again plays around with murder, all to get someone to cry. 3 points easy. Meanwhile, Scourge? Yeah, he's smart and dangerous, but not quite as manipulative as either Mephiles or even Metal Sonic, especially after turning from evil Sonic to Scourge. In my personal theory, he became even less conniving after that point, relying more on his newfound strength instead of whatever intellect he does have. Meanwhile, Metal Sonic is somewhere in between. In Sonic Heroes, he's revealed to be the mastermind behind everything instead of Eggman. He also was able to use Amy as bait in Sonic CD to lure in Sonic. Another good example of thinking strategically. So while he's not so much of a smooth talker like Mephiles, he has more instances of craftiness than Scourge. So 3 points for Mephiles, 2 for Metal Sonic, and 1 for Scourge. Moving on to round 5, I want to look at how many appearances these villains have in the Sonicverse. Eobard isn't just a one-time villain for the Flash. He pops up multiple times like a thorn in the Scarlet Speedster's side, which with very little contest goes for Metal Sonic as well. Having multiple appearances in shows, comics, the games, and now the movies, he's a core villain that Sega has come back to plenty of times. Scourge has appeared multiple times as well within the comics, but not in any other form of Sonic media. Meanwhile, Mephiles has actually been in quite a few Sonic games, plus the RG comics apparently, but I'm still gonna give him last on this because aside from Sonic 06 and Shadow Generations, the rest of the games are racing games, which he got added as a character to. Correct me if I'm wrong since I haven't played every single one of these games, but I don't think he was the main villain of any of them, just a bonus character. And as for the Archie comics, like, the one page I saw doesn't really make him out to be a villain. He's kind of just chilling. So, yeah, 3 points for Metal Sonic, 2 for Scourge, and 1 point for Mephiles for this round. Next is round 6, which is Selfish Team-Ups. Reverse Flash, in all his Flash-hating glory, knows when it's better to put aside his rage in order to save his own skin. So, while rare, he has indeed teamed up with his greatest enemy. And Scourge has done this too, teaming up with Sonic to fight Metal Sonic and Metal Scourge. It was brief, but still, it happened. Meanwhile, Mephiles has never officially teamed up with Sonic or the others to save himself. However, like I said in my last video, I genuinely think he would, since he's so selfish and bent on his plans of succeeding. It also helps that he doesn't have a personal vendetta against Sonic, as I said earlier, so a temporary partnership could totally be an option if needed. Metal Sonic, though, I think not. He's too bent on becoming better than Sonic. And from what I can think of, I don't think Metal Sonic has ever teamed up with Sonic for anything. So Scourge is getting 3 points, Mephiles is getting 2 points, and Metal Sonic is getting 1 point. Now round 7, successfully killing the hero. Reverse Flash has killed Flash before. It's usually short-lived, as that timeline always ends up getting fixed somehow and the Flash is okay in the end, but still, Reverse Flash has been successful in that department. And while all 3 of our villains are great opponents for Sonic, only one of them has actually killed Sonic to my knowledge, Mephiles. And to top it off more, the timeline needed to be altered for Mephiles to not be successful, as Elise blows out the original tiny flame that years later would become the great and terrible Iblis. Nothing like this has ever happened with Metal Sonic or Scourge. So while Mephiles gets 3 points, both Scourge and Metal Sonic are gonna take 2 points from this round, since they're not completely helpless villains, but have never successfully defeated Sonic. Round 8, Impersonation. Whether it's getting high-tech plastic surgery to look like Barry Allen, or morphing into Dr. Wells to blend in, Eobard has a habit of shape-shifting into other people. Now, this one's actually really hard to decide on because of intent versus capability. Mephiles is at the top when it comes to the ability to shapeshift. He morphs into something similar to Shadow right when he escapes from the Scepter. However, he doesn't shapeshift into something like Shadow in order to take his place, or to trick anybody. It was just out of convenience. Meanwhile, on the flip side, both Evil Sonic and Metal Sonic have purposely disguised themselves as Sonic or other people. So, while their original design of looking close to Sonic wasn't in their control, they still use that to their advantage. Therefore, both Scourge and Metal Sonic will get 3 points, while Mephiles gets 2 points. Finally, we move on to the last round, which is abilities. Reverse Flash is fast, just like the Flash. And that's something that all these villains have in common as well with Sonic. However, we gotta dig a little deeper to try and find a winner here. So, what else is there about Eobard? Well, he uses the negative Speed Force, which is mostly accessed through one's negative emotions. So, while Reverse Flash is fast like Flash, it's still, in a way, different. Now, unfortunately, this is another time where I'm gonna immediately put Mephiles at the bottom of the list. Because while he does have the speed due to copying Shadow, he never directly tries to race Sonic or even use his speed all that much. His Shadow powers seem to be much more useful to him. Metal Sonic and Scourge, however, are a lot harder to distinguish. They both basically have the same powers as Sonic. They both can draw energy from the Master Emerald, and they both have super forms. So in the end, there were really only 2 very minor differences that made me make the choice that I made. The first was that Metal Sonic often overloads when he pushes himself too much. He's always held back by his technology, which needs to be updated before he can push himself to go even faster. It's not his fault, but he isn't a living thing, so he's only as strong as his tech, which is something that Eobard never has to deal with because, like I said, he's a person. Second, Metal Sonic uses the same Chaos Emeralds as Sonic, since they're from the same universe. Scourge, on the other hand, uses his anti-Mobius versions of the Chaos Emeralds, called Anarchy Burials. They also give Scourge a super boost to fight against Sonic, But unlike Sonic's Chaos Emeralds, the Anarchy Burials suck the energy out of its user once they're done with them. Therefore, Scourge gets really tired after using them. So, an opposite to the energy boost Sonic usually feels after using Chaos Emeralds. Which sounds a lot like a slight enough difference to me that I'm gonna have to give Scourge 3 points for this round and Metal Sonic 2 points, while, like I said, Mephiles gets 1 point. Whew. So, in the end, to total everything up, Mephiles has 18 points, Metal Sonic has 19 points, and Scourge has 20 points? Wait, Scourge is the winner? Wow, I was genuinely expecting Metal Sonic to totally pull away with this. I was not expecting Scourge to win. I mean, I also kind of wanted Mephiles to win since, you know, he was my original pick. But hey, I tried my best to be unbiased and choose who got how many points in each round as fairly as I possibly could. It was hard, not gonna lie. I kept bouncing back and forth with some of the rounds since just a 1 point change would completely alter who won the whole entire thing. So in the end, I'll say Reverse Flash is just hard to replicate, okay? You can have some characters who are similar, but unless you have directly copying the Reverse Flash in mind, there is no way you're gonna get a perfect match. Which is why even though Scourge won, it was only by a point or two. Because all three of these characters are great picks as villains, as Reverse Flash types. It's just kind of what points you decide to focus on when trying to compare them. But anyway, that's it for this video. What did you think? Were my choices for who won what rounds correct? Or do you think I should have chosen differently? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you liked this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!